Hello, everybody. This is Raul Ramirez of the Catch Wrestling Alliance, where we help you to elevate your grappling, and together we keep real wrestling alive. Thank you very much for joining me, listening to me, whether it's the video on our YouTube channel or our Twitch stream, or listening to our podcasts virtually everywhere now. Right, even on someone mentioned they listen on the Audible app. We're also on like the Samsung podcast app, and and then if we're on those, then we're definitely on whatever app you're using. So thank you very much for tuning in. So let's go ahead and just give some updates of what's going on nowadays. We've got a few things going on besides just our catch wrestling class at UCLA started again for the spring quarter. That seems to be going well. Seems like everyone is in the mood to work out at least, and to do some martial arts training, which is good. So our classes are pretty full, like catch wrestling and our striking classes. I also teach kickboxing because I was a two-time national kickboxing champion as well in the United States. Trained in China and all that, and so that's why I can teach kickboxing there and stuff. So, but yeah, it seems like everything's moving really well. And so, if you're listening to this and you happen to be a UCLA student, feel free to come check out the classes. We just, just 1 week. We're just 1 week in for the summer, or actually for a spring quarter. So, still time to take plenty of classes. So feel free to come along. If you're not a UCLA student, then you're welcome to train with us at Fight Science MMA in Los Angeles. So that's a MMA studio that you can just look up on like Google Maps or whatever, and you can just do a drop-in fee if you just want to take our class. You can feel free to join that gym as well. They have plenty of, it's an MMA studio. We have a UFC fighter who trains out of there. We have, all kinds of classes there. I don't teach everything there, so it's going to be a mix of things. So, feel free to check it out. So you can either just take my class by itself, or you can join or whatever. Let me see. So we also got something else. I don't know if you happen to see our like on our YouTube channel on our stories, or our story on Instagram and TikTok. I just released something a little while ago that was kind of a little few second clip of what we started working on earlier. We're hopefully going to be able to release the second volume of our pressure passing system, which so for those of you who don't know, we released what I call like the pressure passing system volume 1. So that's available on our website. So basically what I did is I designed it's a one-off course where we use kind of one way of cradling to pass guard. So basically it's basically like passing using a pressure passing system against closed guard. And so then the next volume, which hopefully will be out very, very soon, will be using, catch wrestling principles to pass open guard or seated guard, right? So it'll be based off of a different principle, different wrestling principles, and should be pretty thorough. So you can see like different ways of passing someone, especially in a no-gi situation, because right now it's so popular to attack just seated. So someone will come at you. They'll be butt scooting towards you. So there's a lot of way to apply, wrestling principles to not only like stop them from, controlling you, but also for you to pass their guard and stay in control. You don't have to butt scoot or anything like that. So that should be coming out. Or if you want to check out our story on Instagram, also our story on YouTube and TikTok, you can see it there. It's just a few seconds. But there'll be many principles that we'll go over, and a bunch of different ways to apply them. So I think this might even be more applicable than even our first pressure pass system. At least in my opinion, I know, but who knows? For me, a lot of the stuff makes sense, and when I teach it to my students, then they can apply it. But give it a shot, check it out. A lot of the stuff works very well, but you just have to kind of like put the practice in, put the time in, get the reps, and then you'll be able to pass all kinds of people's guards. All right. So that should be out hopefully within the next few weeks. So we're working on that right now. So stay tuned, and hopefully, we'll just announce it, and then it should be unavoidable. Right? So I'll mention it here and everything like that too. So there's no way you can miss it. All right. So the topic for today is basically is based off of a recent article written by one of my friends, or one of the friends to the show, Sam Yang, who is he's the host of Southpaw podcast, and I put a link to their website in the description. And so what it is, it brings up some interesting ideas that I kind of thought, because say like right now in not only MMA, but you can kind of think like the way people describe MMA at first, where it's like people are just going to learn all kinds of things and then maybe put it together, and it's all about whatever works and whatnot. Because that's kind of that's what you'll be hearing. Like someone will say, like, oh, I'm just going to learn whatever works, and then that's going to be my style. And I don't want to, like, I know a lot of people love Bruce Lee, but it's kind of like the whole idea where it's like, oh, you just take techniques that you like from all kinds of random styles, and then you make your own style and you're formless. But is that really like the ideal thing, or is that really like a viable thing to do? And so I'll kind of give you some quotes from Sam's article here. It's actually very, very short. So let me just read you the first like couple sentences. So here it is from Sam. There is a dominant belief that the best style for MMA is no style, and that specializing early in generalization makes for the best MMA. But in reality, fighters with a bottom-up primary framework have an advantage over generalists. Rather than aimless MMA, a primary framework gives fighters a primary MMA language, allowing them to pull from other languages for strength and clarity. Without a primary language, it's hard to have cohesive thoughts. All right. So this kind of goes to like, so like at the beginning of the podcast today, I said that at UCLA I teach kickboxing and wrestling, or catch wrestling, and in particular the style of kickboxing that I know is Chinese kickboxing, or it's called Sanda, Wushu Sanda. It's practiced all over the world. There's like a world championship for it and everything. And in MMA, right now, a lot of women, Chinese women, are doing very well competing in MMA, but in China they did Sanda. And then in the men's divisions, these in one championship, we have a school in the Philippines that is a Sanda based school, and the men from there, and I think they have some women who compete out of there now, but it was at first it was like a lot of guys coming out of there doing very, very well Sanda based MMA. And so what Sam's kind of saying in the article is that, like, if you have like this one style as your base, that's kind of like the framework or the foundation that you can build off for like future things, where, like, say if you wanted to do MMA, right? So you have like in particular thing, sticking with the Sanda idea, where it's like you have the punch. So Sanda has punches, kicks, knees. It does have elbows or whatever, but mostly punch, kicks, knees, but a lot of wrestling. So you can suplex, you can do all kinds of takedowns. And so once you have that idea, where it's more of like this top down approach, everything you start standing, you don't want to like fall back onto your back. You have all these kinds of I guess like rules or just like the language or the way things are done, the way things are expressed. And then the people from these different schools, maybe then they can supplement, like say maybe with, and so like there was a recent fight in one championship where one of the Philippine guys from this team Lakai, the Sanda school, they were going up against a really good freestyle wrestler from Indonesia. And so what they did during their training leading up to the match is that they brought in just more freestyle wrestlers. I think they brought in some from Iran and stuff. So um, the the fighter, Danny Kingad from the Philippines, was able to then beat Eko Roni Saputra from Indonesia, and he just really dominated him because he had that framework of really good striking and takedown defense. But then when the fight went to the ground, just the wrestling was more like fleshed out and more solid for from Danny. So Ekaroni didn't have really a chance. I mean, he still was a really tough guy, but they were able to pull out the win in that way. So the um, same thing happens with catch wrestling. So we have this style that's actually very um, like it's very well fleshed out. There's many aspects to it because unfortunately, it just seems like a lot of times nowadays when people say wrestling, they just think takedowns, right? And I mean, some people also think pro wrestling, right? But I think those of us who are more into like martial arts and stuff, when they say wrestling, they're just thinking takedowns. And but wrestling has always been much more than that, and in particular catch wrestling, since it is a kind of top down sport, it does have a similar um, like way of approaching a match, right? So you always start standing, you start neutral, you're not touching the other person, and then you have to engage, whether you can try to take them down, try to pin them, etc. So you have this framework or this way of doing things that is actually a really good base, a really good foundation that maybe if you want to do MMA later, then you can add some of the kickboxing or the boxing uh, aspects to it, right? To that framework. But you have to kind of have like that primary, like how the primary framework, or how Sam says you have that primary language, right? So we'll go ahead and maybe just read that next sentence. It says, in theory, a formless fighter has everything to draw from, but in practice, having a framework eases decision making and gets more done, right? So what does that mean, right? So it's like you kind of have I really think about like when the match is on the ground. So once you get that takedown in wrestling, it's like you don't want to go onto your back. You prefer to maybe get into referee's position, or we say like getting into, well, like in jiu-jitsu they call it like turtle, but it's not exactly the same thing. But instead of allowing someone to like rain down all their punches and elbows onto your face with you being face up, you would go belly down, try to work your way back up. And I think we're seeing a lot more MMA fighters do that. They actually go to like all fours, like hands and knees, and they start getting their butt up in the air, and then they start trying to get back to standing. That's kind of that's like a change that's occurring in MMA that I'm seeing more and more happen. More and more people doing that, implementing the stand up instead of just trying to like throw up a triangle choke from the bottom or whatever. But that goes back to that. Like, say you have this framework, you have this you already have kind of like the way of doing things or the language or whatever, so that you don't have to be thinking like, oh, what is this? Some kind of like magical technique that that you see on Instagram floating around or whatever, or TikTok floating around. There's all these like crazy techniques that are floating around nowadays, that you probably won't be able to hit in a real match, right? Unless you practice it a lot, but then you have to you have to set it up within your primary framework or your primary foundation, right? So uh, that's why it's like you can't necessarily. I mean, I'm sure some people can be successful, right? Just picking things from here and there, but chances are you'll be more successful if you have some kind of way of doing things, a way of operating, right? And so let's go and go on here. It says, Sam says, just because you can do everything doesn't mean you should do everything. And he gives an example of the pizza. So he says, for example, a pizza can have near infinite number of toppings, but when you actually put everything on it, you no longer have a pizza, but a hot mess, right? So let me see. Let me skip down a little bit. Um, Trying to wield all of martial arts is impractical. Imagine a sandwich. Going back to food, right? So imagine a sandwich filled with 20 items. It might sound good in theory, but do you have a mouth big enough to eat it? Let alone a palate that can differentiate that many flavors? Likewise, do you have mind and body capable of juggling infinite moves when humans are notoriously bad at multitasking or remembering? You can talk about being like water because being like water is a metaphor, but actually try to be like water, formless. Then you'll be like Applebee's. So it's like you'll have like a restaurant that's like it's got like this huge menu that it's like it's just confusing. And or you can think about like even colors, where they talk about like if you have all these paints, you want to paint something great, but if you mix all the paints together, then it's just like brown, black, uh, goo, right? So it's all about like being able to have that framework where all the different, like say the different techniques fit within that framework. So then that way the painting comes out great. You can see all the different shapes and whatnot. Or we talking about the sandwich. The sandwich has like a really great flavor, or the pizza, or whatever, has like the flavor that's just right, not just like a ton of stuff all together. So that's kind of the idea, where it's like if you have this type of framework, then you can easily kind of fall back onto it, even if you're in an unfamiliar fighting situation, if you're in an unfamiliar grappling situation. And in a way, it's like this is why we're kind of doing some of these different like one-off courses where it's like the pressure pass. So using the wrestling principles to maybe help people see like how you can apply wrestling or catch wrestling into these different scenarios, whether it be closed guard or open guard. Um, you're you're still able to see these principles in action, and even though the situation might be unfamiliar, you have a framework to fall back on, and then you can still compete and attack accordingly. So hopefully that helps. All right, so I think it should, and hopefully that kind of helps people to understand that there is kind of a difference. So you'll see like say a lot of times like people, they might want to learn catch wrestling to supplement their jiu-jitsu, but again, it's like these two different languages, or two different pizzas, or two different sandwiches, or whatever. So um, you might learn some holds, some wrestling holds from catch wrestling, but it might be difficult to implement in a jiu-jitsu scenario, because like kind of like the framework is a little bit different. Um, so hopefully that makes sense. Let's go and get to some comments here. We got some commenting happening, right? So Shinhee E, it's been a while. Are you live? Yes, I'm live. Let me see. I would like to see some more catch wrestling submissions in 1FC. I do believe catch submissions are a bit different from BJJ, maybe more brutal and more painful. Be formless. Didn't Bruce Lee say something like that? Yes, he said something like that. So in the article, it's just kind of like it's something that's easy to say, but then in practice, you're not always going to be able to implement that, right? So usually it's easier to almost like be freer in your movements when you have a good foundation, right? Because you'll have uh, some kind of framework to fall back on, especially if someone who's like a higher level person that can counter a lot of things. You don't just get stuck mentally, right? You don't just feel like that you can't do anything against them. At least you'll have some good defense if you have some great wrestling ability, right? You can um, you know, get out from underneath or whatever the scenario is, you'll have some idea um, of how to react even in an unfamiliar situation. All right, Shinhei. In Japan, there's a karate style called Kudo. Yes, it's more like MMA, but you wear a gi. It has everything, even headbutts and kicking like groin strikes to break guard and set up a knockout. Yes, yes, it's true. I've seen that many times. I don't know. I'm just not a fan of it. We had a really great Kudo guy who came to visit at this one old jiu-jitsu school that I used to work at. Um, it's all right, but yeah, in a way, it seems like kind of back to the point of MMA, where you might have a lot of people nowadays where they're doing MMA, right? They're uh, getting like impressions of different styles without necessarily having a one style that they know very, very well. And so you have someone that's just proficient at a bunch of different things, but not like really you haven't really set up that kind of like the whole framework thing we kind of mentioned, where you have this really strong foundation. And I'm sure maybe there are probably some really great Kudo people, but the great Kudo guy that came from Japan to visit, um, it was a tough guy, but still seemed a little bit more kind of like he just knew a bunch of different things like pretty well, but not quite the same as what I'm talking about here. Um, and I think that, in my opinion, is a little bit detrimental. But I would just say that because I'm a big fan of catch wrestling and even the Chinese kickboxing stuff that I do. So I'm always gonna defer to those things where it's like you always have kind of like this idea where it's like a top down approach, and everything kind of works off of that, right? Off of that way of doing things. So, so in a way, you're not confused as to what do I do now. Whether like if you take someone from a Sanda situation, I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of these practitioners are doing very well in MMA, because they can get the takedown and maybe they'll try to stay on top. Unfortunately, some will choose to do like some uh, jujitsu stuff and not so much wrestling stuff, like the guys out of the Philippines. Um, but yeah, it's one of the things. Maybe we can talk about that later. I wish the Chinese knew more about catch wrestling than jujitsu, because I see some of the Sanda people. If there's like a takedown, then they'll try to fight off their back or whatever. But it a lot of times it's much better to not necessarily fight off your back, but to reverse them and get on top, and then you then use gravity to hold them down and gravity to rain down your elbows and punches. And like in one championship, you can do knees and stuff to the downed opponent's head and stuff. So um, ultimately, like it's going to be my opinion to that I think it's better to have that wrestling or that kind of top down approach. And if you're underneath, try to get out, use your wrestling ability to get out from underneath, see if you can't get back on top, and then see if you can't rain down your strikes. So that's my opinion, right? So it's one of the reasons why I wanted to bring up the article. I felt like it kind of put into words some of the things that I was thinking about. I did reach out to Sam Young, who wrote it. He's a little busy right now, so maybe he'll come on again in the future. We do have he's been on like a couple years ago or a year ago. You can always look back on our podcast list, and you'll see him as we talked about other things wrestling oriented, and you can check him out there. And of course, we have his website listed in the description, so you can go ahead and check that out too. If you have any questions, go ahead. While we're still alive, go ahead and write them in. You can write to us either on our YouTube channel or our Twitch stream. So then I'll be able to see all the comments here. All right, actually we got one. Jahi Gaines, or hopefully I pronounced it right. Who are the best guys to watch for examples of catch wrestling techniques? So you know Sakuraba. Let me see. I'd like to see more examples. One of the very best actually competed several times for the Catch Wrestling Alliance in our events. And actually, there's a really good example of him. He's a smaller guy. His name's Matt Tran. He was trained by our good buddy on the East Coast, John Strickland, and who has like the lineage, like the American lineage that goes back through to Farmer Burns, and he's also been on our podcast several times. Hopefully, he can come back soon. But anyway, Matt Tran. So you can maybe we can do a thing where it's like all of Matt Tran's videos, or I think now there's like some way to like maybe you can go to our YouTube channel. I think they added like a search feature. But anyway, you can go. I think I put a playlist up there where it has all of our matches, and you could just scroll down. Like all of Matt Tran's show really great examples of catch wrestling principles being put into use. I think he's won a few of our matches by pins, a few by like a double wrist lock. I think he even got like a face lock finish or cross face finish. He's had several matches for us throughout the years. So yeah, definitely go check him out. I think he's a really, really good example. And actually, we had some other people who, from like commenting where even one of our buddies in Brazil, who's the jiu-jitsu black belt, I think he became a fan of our YouTube channel because of Matt Tran's matches. He started just looking through a lot of the catch wrestling matches, and he was kind of curious about the sport. But when he found Matt Tran, he's like, "Wow, this seems very effective and not the usual jiu-jitsu stuff." So it's like he was just really excited about the way Matt Tran did things. So, and Matt also is one of the reasons why he's also very, very unique is that he did not do like jiu-jitsu or anything like that. He's only trained in catch wrestling. So that's another reason why he's like a really great example. He didn't do any freestyle. He didn't do jiu-jitsu, whatever. It was only catch wrestling. And he trained also MMA stuff. So he's fought in MMA. He's also fought in Muay Thai now in Thailand. But the grappling has always been catch wrestling only. So I think he's probably one of the absolute best examples. So hopefully that helps you out. Jahi Gaines. So thanks for commenting, and yeah, go ahead and just check out our YouTube channel, and then you can see all the matches and stuff, and you should find them. All right. So if anybody has any other questions, go ahead and just type it in either our YouTube channel comment or the Twitch, and I should be able to see them all here. But the main thing we're talking about is like having some kind of framework is most likely like way more beneficial for you than just like picking techniques here and there and making like that your style or whatever. It might not be the best way to approach grappling or MMA or just like martial arts in general. Yeah. Also, we got another so Jonathan Jimenez, thanks for being out there. So Jonathan is someone who also trains with us at Fight Science MMA. Thanks for listening and watching, and thanks for commenting. So if anybody has any questions about training, Jonathan will be happy to answer. So feel free to chat with him or even reach out to him too. He can kind of, if you want a different perspective than just mine, because of course I'm going to talk about like how great catch wrestling is and all that, but if you want someone else to talk about it, get some different perspective, Jonathan's there for you. All right. So hopefully this kind of helped you to understand, because it's been something that I always said that in my perspective, like from a a striking base that I think is like really great, of course, is the Chinese kickboxing, because it's a little bit more, it has like the wrestling kind of baked into the striking. And then the wrestling base that I like the best is the catch wrestling. It's so thorough, right? And I think it's probably one of the better ones, not only for MMA, but potentially even for self-defense, because you don't necessarily have to hurt anybody. You can control someone and restrain them, and without hurting them or without choking them to death and stuff like that. So catch wrestling is very versatile in that way. Yeah. All right. So if you want to like help us out, you can always become a member of our YouTube channel. We always put up different members only videos on there. So we added a couple more this past week. If you want to help us out, everything is appreciated. If you want to train with us, we're here in LA at Fight Science MMA. Or if you're a UCLA student, you can train with us at the John Wooden Center. Also, if you want to train with our buddy on the East Coast, John Strickland, you can look him up on Facebook. He's American Hook Wrestling. But we also, if you're not in any of those areas, you can always check out our Catch Wrestling Alliance Academy. So on our website, so catchwrestlingalliance.com, CWA Academy. It has a really great membership area. So it has its own app that we put up a bunch of different videos that are answering your questions and stuff like that. So it's more and more active, and so you're welcome to like go and ask your questions, and then so we have all these different really cool videos that we will that I'll put up also to answer questions specifically from everyone in our community there. So feel free to join, or feel free to, if you don't want to train, you can always just support us through our YouTube channel, and it's all appreciated because it goes to having more events and stuff. So thank you very much for that. All right. So Jonathan Jimenez has a really good comment here. So it's like the best MMA fighters are all wrestlers. And then Shinhei says, I reckon catch wrestling is more suited for MMA. Although jiu-jitsu is a trend, right? So yeah, I think a lot of people it's because it's so popular that they feel like they have to do it, even though you see kind of like people with this top-down, more wrestling-like approach doing very, very well. So yeah, it's like almost like marketing is so good for jiu-jitsu that people are going to do it, even if they know that it might not be the best thing. All right. So with that being said, check out check out all our things, and then also we'll be letting you know about our Pressure Pass Volume 2. Hopefully, like we can get that out very, very soon, and then within the next couple weeks. All right. Okay. So thanks again, and we're here to help you to elevate your grappling, and then together we keep real wrestling alive. Thanks very much.